Hey everybody, Aaron Bishop here on behalf of the Patterns of Life Bible. In the Gospels, we read the story of Jesus. We get it 3 times in the Synoptic Gospels, and then John has his own particular take on the life of Jesus. And in the book of John, we encounter some stories that we don't really read of anywhere else. And as we really stop and consider the book of John, we recognize that John is being very careful to highlight Jesus' divinity. We find this in many places. One of those is in the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. In the book of John, it is the center pericope. It's the center theme of the entire book. Life to someone who's been dead. Not just dead 3 days, dead 4 days. Unprecedented in all of the Bible. In this story, it's actually a rather short chiasm, but it's so cool how it's laid out. So let's take a look at John pericope 41 and dig into what this story reveals for us. John pericope 41, in the normal Bible, it's John chapter 11, 38 through 44. So at this point in the story, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. Jesus has come to Bethany. He's met with the family. Jesus wept. That's verse 35 in this chapter. And then Jesus comes and he approaches the tomb of Lazarus. And just before this, we read of this torment within Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus. Why didn't you come earlier? We believed that you could raise him, that you could have saved him. But it's too late. It's too far gone. It's 4 days. In the Jewish understanding of the day, for 3 days, the spirit of the person would hover around the body. And then after 3 days, it would then go to heaven and be with God. After 3 days, you can't raise anyone to life, according to the Jewish tradition or the idea of how things could be done. So a 4th day resurrection, as I said before, unprecedented. It was thought that it was impossible, which is why Mary and Martha show such a lack of faith in Jesus to be able to do this. He can't do this. He took too long. He's raised other people from the dead, but they weren't dead 3 days. This one has gone 4 days. Why did he delay? Why did he take so long getting here? He could have saved him if he'd just gotten here earlier. And that's where this story comes in. In A and A prime, we read of the command of Jesus. In A, we read of Jesus coming to the grave and commanding that the stone be taken away from the grave. And this is where we find out that why? What's the point? He's been dead for 4 days. But in A prime, we read of the command of Jesus as he cried out with a loud voice for Lazarus to come forth. And he comes out of the grave bound head and foot with his grave clothes, and Jesus commands to let him go. The 2 commands of Jesus, one to a woman who's grieving and completely not understanding, and one to a corpse that rises from the dead and comes stumbling out of his grave, wearing all of the preparations for a corpse that were common in Jewish culture. In B and B prime, we read of faith. Jesus says to Martha in B, "Haven't I told you that if you would believe, you'll see the glory of God?" And in B prime, as he's praying to God, he says, "I know that you hearest me always, but because of the people who stand by here, I've said these things so that they might believe." Jesus is explaining here that he doesn't need to say these things in order for it to happen. And yet he does so for the benefit of those around him, so that they might be encouraged in their faith that God is capable of doing amazing things. And in C, we find the center of this, and it's not what you might think. The center isn't Lazarus rising from the grave. The center isn't the command to come forth. The center isn't even Jesus' grief or the grief of those who are around him. The center of this is Jesus expressing gratitude for God for what he is about to do. They took the stone away from where the dead was laid, and Jesus lifted his eyes and said to the Father, "I thank you because you have heard me." Now that's really profound, that the center of this pericope, what it's driving at, the center of the book of John, is this short little expression of gratitude towards God that he hears our prayers. That is absolutely profound in my opinion. And we see this all throughout the Bible. Now, for example, in the book of James, it says if you ask something without believing that it will be given to you, you're asking out of a double-mindedness, and that you're not likely to get it because of that. This idea that Jesus is promoting here is that when you ask God for something, you do so with the full understanding that he does hear your prayers, and he will answer your prayers. He may not give you what you ask for, but he will hear you, and he will answer. It just might be a no, but he does hear, and he does care.